Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Monday night panel. Bit of a split agenda tonight. So for the first half hour, we've got a Monday night panel reviewing the game on Saturday. And then we have Matty Taylor from about 7:30. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it for 7, so we decided to go live with just a panel. So I hope you're okay after a bit of a disappointing weekend on the field. Just a few things to say. Advisory board minutes from last week are now on the club website and on socials. So have a look at those for some of the answers that you may have asked questions regarding. Mansfield tickets for the game on the 29th of October go on sale to season ticket holders tomorrow from 12 noon and from Thursday on general sale at 10 o'clock. Hartlepool, the game on the 22nd of October. The women's team will be playing their match against Poulton Town straight after the men's first team, 5:45 kickoff. So hopefully we'll have a good attendance for that. People who come to the men's game can stay behind and watch that as well, which is will be nice. Next week we have a Monday night panel as usual, which will be reviewing the home game against Colchester. But on the Tuesday, we do have an On the Sofa, but it's 11 o'clock in the morning. It's with Danny Wilson, who has a new book out. So we will be going live at 11 o'clock, but we know a lot of people won't be able to make that. So we will be, as we always do, we will record it anyway. So if you have any questions that you would like us to raise to Danny, we will be doing a social media tweet and Facebook tweet to ask for questions. So put your questions to that. We will put them forward to Danny, and then you can watch the recording at your leisure. Okay, so that's next Tuesday at 11 o'clock. 2 weeks today, we have Michael Doughty. It actually used to be 3 weeks today, 31st of October. My days are all gone. 31st of October, we've got Michael Doughty on the sofa. So that's another date for your calendars. And hopefully we'll have some more coming up for November as well. So keep a look on the website and on socials for those. Right, let's get Vic on. Hiya, Vic.
Hi, Chris. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. You?
Yeah, I'm okay. Thank you very much indeed. I've got some SAS travel news for you.
Okay.
Open from 7 o'clock tomorrow night, of course, and they're taking orders for Bristol Rovers next Tuesday night. There are not many spaces left for that, so if you want to go to Bristol Rovers next Tuesday evening for the EFL Trophy match, get in touch tomorrow night. Also for Bradford City, which is 2 weeks tomorrow, I believe. Is that right? Yes. Is that right? Or is it? No, it's the 25th, something like that. Anyway, for Bradford City away on the Tuesday, they're available. And then from Thursday, you'll be able to book for Mansfield. So Bristol Rovers tomorrow night, Bradford City tomorrow night, and Mansfield from Thursday night. That's the SAS travel news.
God, dates get all so confusing, don't they? So
October seems to be weird, doesn't it? It's all over the shop. Yeah.
Okay, shall we get our panel on? So we have a debutant tonight, haven't we?
We do.
So let's put him on first. Mr. Garrett, Andy Garrett, welcome. Your first appearance.
Good evening.
Good evening. We hope you enjoy.
Thank
and
you
old
very
hat, Mr. Rob and Andrew. There we go.
He's got a much better old hat than I have.
We'll make him take it off one day.
Okay, so as usual, any questions, please leave them in the comments. We'll get through as many as possible, and we will bring Matty on as soon as we can. Okay, speak to you soon.
Thanks, Chris. And when he does come on, duck, because there's bound to be a 35-yard free kick heading your way as soon as he comes on. Andy, welcome. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. Rob, welcome. Andrew, also. And thank you for joining us at short notice, because we had to rejig things a little bit because Matt wasn't available till 7:30. But let's go around the panel and get your take on Saturday. Andy, obviously, well, it goes without saying, disappointing 2-0 away at Stevenage. You went to the top of the table. What was your take on it?
Yeah, very disappointing. It's just, I think it's just the lack of firepower. We obviously had no shots on target. Possession was 70% possession. It's just extremely frustrating, I feel. It's just, it's the playing out from the back, sort of taking it forward. It was just extremely frustrating from my point of view.
Yeah, good word, Rob, wasn't it? I mean, no shots on target in 90 minutes. We had plenty of possession with Hutton down the right-hand side, but somehow that never came to anything. He got man of the match, I think, on the bus. What was your take on the game?
Yeah, I think frustrating is probably a very good description. I think we seem to have come up against a couple of teams in the last week or so that have done a job on us, for want of a better phrase, Northampton and Stevenage. Northampton, not so much in terms of owning possession, but they just seem to have a commonality between them, and as much as they're a bit more physical teams, they didn't want to give us much time on the ball. They made sure that defensively they were extremely organised and wanted to break on us with quick forwards and with that bit of physicality that made it difficult for us to make our way up the pitch very quickly. And I don't think we've adapted very well to that. And I think at the moment that probably explains where our limitations lie. I think against teams who want to come out and have a football game against us, Swindon are going to be as good a match for anybody that there is in the division so far. But if you want to be a bit more physical against you and you want to have that little bit more devil about you, for want of a better expression, then those sort of teams are the ones that Town are struggling against just at the moment.
Yeah. Dave, the chair, says, welcome, Andy, and to the rest of the team, of course. We should say well done to Dave, the chair, who was given an autograph football by the club against for the Newport game, which is a lovely touch by the football club. We should also say, of course, Newport sacked their manager today. So one of two managerial departures, Steve Bruce being the other. Andrew, your take on Saturday. You had the general with you. What did you and what did he think?
We weren't sort of too far away. Again, the frustration is very much the theme, especially the way the sort of game petered out. I think I do echo sort of Rob's worries that we're finding the sort of physical teams a little bit more difficult to handle. I did ask Scott Lindsay that afterwards, and he just said we did beat Sutton, so that was his sort of answer, which wasn't entirely an answer, but yeah, I think especially once you let teams like that go ahead, it just gets very difficult because they're quite happy to sort of sit there and prey on your mistakes. I think for someone we know as a striker, Danny Rose, for them, the forward, he seemed to spend a lot of time as soon as they went 1-0 up, just sort of sitting on the right side of midfield and making an extra man, and they drop him back, and again, it was all just sort of a bit predictable. The attempts to try and unlock Stevenage, they all dealt with it fairly comfortably. It did sort of kind of peter out rather than be any sort of real threat, because it was strange. There's the point at 1-0 West Swindon were attacking, then they get caught at the back, and the game just sort of faded to nothing really after the 2-0.
It did. Kevin says we must be the easiest team in this league to play against. We're so nice. Rich says Saturday was a rubbish match. Old Dub for Ratter, hello to you. Good evening. I thought Saturday the defence of Stevenage was solid. We seemed to be scared to shoot. Stevenage worked harder than us. I didn't like their long ball tactics. I thought it was hope for the best. Their goals, we gave them on a play. Andy, the first one, there was no marking at all. He was at the far post. Thanks ever so much. I'll slot that one in.
Yeah.
Defensively, a bit of a shambles.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that seems to be happening time and time again, doesn't it? We've seen it so many times this season where we've just let teams come in and, just walk through us, basically. And that's, again, frustrating.
Your favourite manager, of course, Steve Evans, Rob. It was a typical Steve Evans performance, I thought. They're always well drilled, whatever people might think of him. He gets his team and they know what they're doing, don't they?
They do. I don't ever want to give that man any credit after all the histrionics from Boston. And I think if you, for those who don't know, do Google him, because the man is a convicted felon. So I wouldn't have him anywhere near my football team. But aside from that, he does know the division and he does know what he's doing. And he will pick a side. He almost seems to like to pick a fight against Swindon, doesn't he? We had the classic circus team when Paolo Di Canio was in charge, and it's almost as if he ups his game when he comes to play against Swindon. And unfortunately for us, we seem to have nice footballing teams that just come right up his street for the sort of sides he wants to put out against us. And I don't think he's changed his tactics in 10 or 15 years against Swindon. And every time it feels like, apart from that Di Canio era, he's come out on top.
I couldn't remember him doing that much.
He didn't need to, did he?
No, not really. Rich says the general came and spoke to some fans on Saturday. He did. We were talking about this beforehand. He actually came into the away end, had picture taken, all that kind of thing. I mean, he must have been pleased with the reception he got. That's the general, Andrew, not Steve Evans.
That if Swindon fans are giving Steve Evans a good reception, then something very strange. but yeah, no, I think he appreciates the extremely high regard he's held in by Swindon fans. I think he sort of understands his cult status and enjoys it, and absolutely, why shouldn't he? So no, it was nice to get him on, and it was quite interesting for the sort of first half of the game. He was sort of feeling his way into kind of doing the sort of co-commentary analysis, but you could tell in the sort of second half he was kind of willing every ball forward, spotting every mistake, getting frustrated with it. So I think he was a bit frustrated by the lack of sort of tempo in the game. I didn't think he'd be alone in that.
No, Tom says, so I think the front three, if it is a three, are too far apart in my opinion. Jeff Cook can't play as a lone striker. And I think, Andy, that's something at Plymouth, they played with another one up front with him. And let's be fair, he had absolutely no service at all on Saturday.
He didn't. No, he was virtually non-existent. No thought to himself, but he was just getting no service whatsoever, was he? Certainly in the first half. He seemed to come to life a little bit in the second half, but there was no service whatsoever, and that seems to be a problem.
And you could say the same for Jeffcott as well. Not Jeffcott, Wakelin as well.
Absolutely.
He had no service either, really, to speak of, did he?
No.
Let's have a look. Sean says, bad day all round on the pitch and off the pitch before the game. Okay. Kevin says, can't wait for safe standing so I can sit down. Those of us of a certain age, Rob, will know exactly what he means, because it's a long time to stand up when you're getting on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. I have to say, it's the footballing world's a strange beast when you can't sit down at a football ground when you want to, and you've got to stand up behind people you can barely see past anyway. But I mean, at the end of the day, everyone's entitled to watch football in their own way. But when the messages are you're in a seater stadium, that's what you want to see, isn't it? If you're stuck at the very back row when you've got no choice other than to stand up to watch the game if you want to see any of it. So it's a little bit of common courtesy for other people. I think that seems to have gone out of the vocabulary a little bit. And I know some people want to stand at football matches, and I have no problem at all with that. So I echo those sentiments. If you get safe standing in all football grounds, everyone can stand in places they want to, and then they can sit in places they want to, and that solves the problem.
And to be fair, there were plenty of spaces at Stevenage on Saturday on the terraces, weren't there? They could have, I mean, to be honest, they could have used half that terracing quite happily.
Depends on more room if you get rid of drums out of football as well.
Yeah, drums in football, discuss. There was a bit of trouble with the old in the director's box last year, wasn't there, Andrew? How was it this year? Was everything a bit more civilised?
Yeah, it was much. I think it was much calmer. It looked calmer in the Swindon and in there. I think the problem was last year there were. I think some Swindon fans got an executive box, enjoyed the hospitality, and were quite vocal in the second half, and I think that got the ire of the home supporters up. Plus the fact, of course, they conceded a last-minute penalty, which we scored from. But it was all much more mundane. Stevenage an easy target sometimes, but I'm not sure how good an atmosphere that is for a side that can't stop winning at home and have just gone top of the table. To be honest, I mean they were cheerful enough, but maybe they're just taking home wins for granted these days.
Well, maybe they are. Andy, do you think they'll last the pace? I mean, are they the sort of team, come the second half of the season, will they still be up there, or will they be dropping down the table?
I can't see it. I think I can see them dropping off. I can't see them keeping up the pace, the way they play. I think they're going to be caught out at some point. So no, I think they'll drop away.
Do you think Mr. Evans will let them drop away? Because he's not the sort of bloke you'd want to,
He's not. No, he's not the sort of person who's going to let them drop away. Whether they're going to be around the playoffs, who knows? Maybe, but I just cannot see them maintaining a top 3 position all season.
Let's have a look more here. Will Jacob play Saturday and Johnny Williams as well because they have Knox? And Carol says highlight of Saturday was having a chat with Granty. I think pretty much I can't think of the highlight of Saturday really, Rob. I'm trying to desperately to think of one.
Carver at lunchtime, Vic, on Saturday. That was probably my highlight.
Well, going in that away bar was pretty much my highlight, where Andy Garrett bought me a pint, which I thought was very great.
Indeed,
yeah. It was very nice. So that was probably it, really. I don't know why. What are we to make of Swindon at the minute? Then 3 wins out of 5. I think it's fair to say. You kind of think they're on the right road. Then they lose against Stevenage. They lose at home against Northampton. They got 2 home games coming up, which pick up 6 points from them. And you're back flying again, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 ways, as always with Swindon, there seems to be 2 ways of looking at it. My take at the moment is we've lost 2 games in a week to Northampton and to Stevenage, will both be up there. I think Stevenage won't drop away, personally, as much as I'd love them to. I think the way that they play their football, they're not likely to be a team that get intimidated or pick up too many injuries. They might get a few suspensions, which might leave them short with a smallish squad, but I think they'll be in and around for most of the rest of the season. So I don't think that will turn out to be a desperately poor result come the end of the season, as much as it feels like it performance-wise now. And we did say a week or so back, didn't we? This is a tough October. Swindon have got some real tough fixtures in October. That back end of the month, we go away to Mansfield and Bradford. I mean, that is a couple of away games. It's probably about as tough as it gets at this level. So I do think at the moment we're struggling to create chances. I think that's evident for everybody. We're good in possession. We keep the ball well. We're still liable to the odd ricket defensively because of the way we play. And as a result of that, there are teams in this division who will capitalise on us as a result of that. And I think we found 2 in the last week, which is, again, probably clouding our judgment a bit because it's 2 in a week when prior to that we hadn't lost in 2 months. So we have to put it into perspective. The wider judgment at the moment for me says we're probably sat in the position we probably ought to be, which now means we've got to try and push on and try and move ourselves up that table.
Andrew, you obviously spoke to Scott Lindsay after the game. I think he said it was the worst performance of the season, and I think he was pretty honest.
Harrogate accepted, yeah.
Well, Harrogate, that wasn't really a proper game because that's obviously in July, so it doesn't count, does it? So he was pretty honest about it in terms of the performance. What struck you from the interview that you did with him?
I think I think he's a reasonably sort of straight shooter on how they've done. I'm not sure there was anything that was sort of particularly kind of revelatory. I mean the only kind of thing I probably didn't quite go deep into enough to was putting in Khan and taking out Reed, just because it's a bit of a sort of different kind of player at the base of your midfield. On reflection, Khan was arguably Khan's best game for Swindon at Grimsby, where he was replacing the suspended Reed until they got sent off. But they are just a bit different. Khan's instinct feels like it's to run with the ball. Reed's is more to sort of pass it and try and dictate a bit. But I think all in all, we're just going to have a lot of close games. I get the impression because I don't think we're going to score as many goals as we did last season. Just kind of looking at the results. So we take Harrogate out of it, as we like to do. We've beat Rochdale by 3. We've lost to Stevenage by 2, and I think everything else has either been a draw or it's had just the 1 goal margin. So it feels like it's going to be a bit sort of on a knife edge whether we sort of move up the table or just kind of slip into something mediocre.
Just a reminder, if you're expecting to see Matt Taylor, he will be with us very shortly, around about 7:30. So he will be joining us then to talk about his life and times and those incredible goals that he scores. Andy says, out-muscled us both legally and illegally, the dark arts. I still believe we have better individual players. Town are inconsistent. Stevenage have a small squad, so I have to wait and see. Do you think we are shot shy? Says old Dufferata. Andy, are we shot shy?
I think we are a little bit shot shy, and the only shots that we had on target, or we didn't have any shots on target, but the only shots that we had seemed to come from Darcy, which were, very weak efforts on Saturday. So you couldn't even sort of say it, it was probably not even a goal attempt, if you like. So, yeah, I'll go along with that. Yeah, we're a shot shy.
Here we are, more coming in. Shades isn't a forward, says Paul. Williams isn't a forward. Too many round pegs in square holes and no quality up front. Hello, Derek. Not strong enough to compete with teams like Stevenage and Northampton. We've only 1 point from our games against the top 3 teams. Need to make more effort in front of goal and stop passing the ball sideways. Shots during the Newport game reaped their rewards. And the start of the second half against Newport, Rob, we suddenly decided, well, we're going to have a shot now. And look what happened.
Yeah, it speaks for itself, doesn't it, really? If you start to have more shots at goal, the chances are you might get just that little bit more luck as well, a little rebound that falls in the path of somebody else. And the one thing that Luke Jeffcott's shown us so far in his time at the Town is that he's there to be your poacher goal scorer. It's the Owen Doyle type goals that he picks up. So if you're not getting the ball in the penalty area, then you're not going to see much of Luke Jeffcott, because he's not going to score you a 25-yard worldie. That's not going to happen. So it is horses for courses. And at the moment, I think we do seem to be struggling with that. Who's going to take responsibility from midfield to have that shot? Andy mentioned Darcy had a few. He had a few on Tuesday night against Newport as well. But all the rest of them added together, you struggle to find where those shots were coming from. And I think we saw one from Agriar when he came on towards the end. And other than that, really, there was very little to get excited about. And I think that is something they have to work on. Mix the game up a little bit. Because let's be honest, it's only, 3 weeks ago when Swindon played really well at Doncaster and really well at Grimsby for 60 minutes until Khan got sent off. So it's not as if the away performances we've been struggling of recent times. I think we do have to take into account the quality and the nous of the opposition on Saturday. And what we didn't have was a way of being able to combat it. And that's where I think they need to spend a bit more of their time and effort when they come up against these sides who you know are going to play in that style. You've got to have something different.
Ian, so Stevenage are not pretty, but they are efficient. That's where Swindon need to be, creating chances and 9 times out of 10 hitting the target. Anthony, if we're in the top 10 come January, I hope Clem will loosen the purse strings a little. 2 good players in maybe. And Greg, hello. If we are struggling to make chances, which positions do we need to change? I think I'll ask you that question in a minute. But the one thing that disappoints me greatly, Andrew, is their goalkeeper never had a save, did he? In any way, shape, or form, if I can remember.
No, not that I can think of. I think the closest he had to get to one was the Hutton shot right at the very end, where he at least had to dive, but it was going wide. But yeah, whereas Darcy was consistently hitting the target from about 20 yards against Newport, he just couldn't with the shots he had. But again, yeah, there is a slight, I don't know, I feel predictability to the team. Maybe just because I'm in that lucky position where I see them week in and week out. If Hutton gets it 9 times out of 10, he's head down trying to get to the byline and get a cross in, or put a cross in early. And if it's on the left hand side, it's a lot more sort of patient. You've got Blake Tracy and Diandlo or whoever consistently sort of work it, and it seems to go back most often. So it just feels like perhaps the sort of patterns of what we're trying to do are a bit recognisable for the better opposition teams. Maybe they might have ideas, or if they think about it, have a good idea what we're going to do and close us down. Maybe I'll do something completely different on Saturday and hit 3.
Well, let's hope so. Just a couple more questions, gentlemen, and then our special guest is here, ready and waiting. Let's have a look. Can somebody explain to me why Gladwin takes set pieces? He's one of our tallest players who should be in the box. Andy, what's your view on that? No,
absolutely. He should be in the box. I don't know. Is there somebody else who can take the set pieces? Perhaps that's something that they need to look at, because, with him being our tallest player, you need him in there. You need him in there to make a nuisance of himself. Definitely.
And here's one for you then, Rob. 2 good players in maybe, and I'm just trying to... Oh, yeah. Greg was asking, which positions do we need to change? I'm not sure whether that's generally or we need to bring players in, or what's your view on that?
Well, I think we need a different option. I've said that pretty much consistently since the season started. I would have liked to have seen a very, very big striker in, and I would like to have seen a very, very big defender in. Not necessarily to take anybody's place, but for the last 20 minutes of a game when you need a goal or you need to do something different defensively, you can roll them out and you can make a big difference. And I think that's where we're struggling at the moment. We don't have anything to change the game. What we bring on is very similar to what we took off.
Louis Reed says, Oliver, Andrew?
You're asking why wasn't he was fit? He was fit. He was on the bench, so he just wasn't selected. Scotland's he just preferred sort of Sadid Khan. I still think Reed's got a big part to play. Obviously, even though his form's dipped and he's been a bit in and out of the team, I think he's been much better. And I think if we are going to have success, he'll be pretty central to that.
Well, lots of questions coming in. Maybe we can get to them a little bit later. But for the moment, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Because I think coming up very shortly, Chris, we have a very special guest indeed. Thank you, gentlemen.
We have a very, very special guest, yes. So thank you very much, guys. And thank you very much for coming on at short notice as well. So, but you're very welcome to stay and listen to the rest of it as well. Okay, so see you later. Right then, Vic, should we get our very special guest on?
I think we should, yes.
There he is. Super Matty Taylor. Hiya. You okay?
Good, thank you. You? Apologies. The children had to get picked up late from school today, so apologies. That's why I'm late.
Never apologise for that. We wonder where your magic hat is, though, because obviously Matty Taylor has a magic hat. We didn't know. Have you not wearing it, or have you got it anywhere? Or
it's upstairs in the loft.
Excellent. Marvellous stuff.
Okay, as usual, any questions, please leave them in comments and we will get through as many as we can. Okay, I'll leave you to it. See you later.
Thanks, Chris. Matt Taylor, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. I've got one of your shirts, well, not one of your shirts, but a similar shirt to the one that you wore at the county ground behind me. You were there for a couple of years. We'll get to that in a little while, but I've spent a very pleasurable afternoon watching your goals this afternoon. You never did 2-yard tap-ins, did you?
No. I think when I was younger, talking about coming through sort of from the age of 16 through to probably 20, I got into a bit of a habit of taking a chance. And I remember my first professional goal was from outside the box, and just one of those things that 9 times out of 10, if I saw the framework of the goal from 25, 30 yards out, I was going to have a go. And I was told very early on in my career it's better to be lucky than good. And I would say that I missed far more shots than I did score. But yeah, I was fortunate enough to score some nice ones.
Well, a lot of them were left-footed, of course, but you also hit a few with your right foot, didn't you? So was that something you practiced in training?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I love football, and invariably I'd be the last one on the training ground. What I did was I used to get one of the young goalkeepers, and we'd have shooting practice every day, because I think that if you're going to try and get better at something, you need to practice. So yeah, most definitely. I didn't practice shooting from the halfway line, but from about 30 yards inwards, I most definitely did.
Wow. Well, some of them you hit from 40 yards. One for Portsmouth was an extraordinary goal up at Sunderland, wasn't it? I mean, that was one of the best goals you ever scored, wasn't it?
It was up there. I mean, the only reason I shot was because our centre forward was off getting treatment. So it was flicked round the corner to me, and I looked up and there was nothing in front of me. So I thought, why not have a go? And it went in. So ironically, wasn't meant to be playing that game.
Well, lots of questions coming in already. So forgive me while I sort of flick through them and get them to you. But let's go right back to the beginning. You were born in a place beloved of Swindon fans, of course, that begins with O. We won't mention the name of it, but we won't hold that against you. And then you started off as a young player with Luton Town. That was in the youth team. How did that all come about?
So I got released from Oxford at 14, and I was playing local football, and I was playing for the Vale of the White Horse, which isn't too far away, obviously, from you guys. And we had a scout at an under-16 game, and he approached my dad, as you did back in those days, and said, would I be interested in going for a trial at Luton? And at the time, I was sitting my GCSEs. Football wasn't really an option for me then. I thought I'd missed the chance. So I went along to the trial, and They played me left back. I'd never played left back before. I'd always played central midfield. And got offered the opportunity to go back for 3 weeks over the summer holiday. Went back over those 3 weeks, struggled because it was new for me, playing football every day, really struggled in the environment. And they weren't sure, that's the truth. I remember sitting on in all the meetings and Luton weren't sure whether they would give me a contract or not. They did about 3 weeks into that first season. Now, it was a difficult decision for me because I chose my A-levels and I had a career mapped out in another route. But I remember sitting down with my parents and just saying, what do you think I should do? I've been offered this 2-year contract. And my dad, I remember vividly, he just said to me, go and do it for 2 years, Matt. If you're not good enough, you can go back and do your A-levels. And the rest is history. So that's my story.
Because you won the Young Player of the Year award, didn't you? So that wasn't a bad thing to do, was it?
No, I got in the team. I made my debut at 17 as a second year because the club were in financial turmoil. The player who was playing in my position at the time, he had to be sold because he was earning too much money. And I got in the team at the beginning of that season. I started the pre-season games, got in the team and played 46 games that season. I mean, my time at Luton was fantastic because I got into a rhythm of playing regular football. And I think for me, that's what it's all been about. Even my move to Swindon. Like my move to Swindon was to play football. It was never based on anything else. I've never moved for any other reason in my career than football. And I suppose that's why I played quite a few games through my career.
Well, it certainly so. I think there was a memorable quote from Joe Kinnear, wasn't there, that when you went to Pompey, he said, at least Dick Turpin had the decency to wear a mask. I think it was 750 grand you went for. Is that right?
It is, yeah. I mean, I didn't get involved in that. It was a tribunal, I think, that set it. I had a couple of options to go to different clubs, but Portsmouth for me at that time in my career was the right move. It was the right move because I felt that the jump for me to go to the Premier League at that time was too great. I thought it was too big. And I'm sure that I would have conquered it. However, it would have probably taken me longer than I wanted. And up to that point in the last 3 seasons, I played sort of 170, 180 first team games. And I was 20. And I wanted to continue playing football, and Portsmouth gave me that opportunity. Listen, I never, ever did I think that within 12 months of leaving Luton and finishing runners-up in what is now League Two, that I'd be a Premier League player. I never ever thought that. I never thought I'd win the league. But it gave me the opportunity to play football and do what I loved. So that's why I chose Portsmouth. Well,
it's an extraordinary... your stats are amazing in the Premier League. So it's 320-odd games in the Premier League, 40 goals. It's an amazing career. And, you know, how do you look back on it? I mean, it's an extraordinary thing, really. And we could go through them. Portsmouth, Bolton, West Ham, Burnley, some of the great teams of English football. How do you look back on those times now?
I think now I look back on it differently than I did do 3 years ago, because obviously having been retired and you do, you know, take a trip every now and then down memory lane when you do podcasts like this or you have an interview. So how do I look back on my career? I sucked every single thing that I could do out of my body and probably achieved far more than I thought I ever would. But that I don't have any regrets. I think that I'd like to say if you spoke to any football fan of the respective clubs that I played for, they'd say, we know every time Matt went out for us, he gave everything. And they accept the mistakes because ultimately that's what we want to see as football fans, right? That's what I want to see when I watch a game of football. I don't. You'll forgive mistakes, it's not a problem. But you just want to see that actually the player in that shirt is giving everything for it. And I think that's what I did for 20 years. And it wasn't, if you like, rocket science. I was never the best player, but what I was acutely aware of is what I was good at and what I needed to get better at. And I think it's what I was good at that gave me the career that I had and the longevity.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're one of these players that nobody's got a bad word to say about. And I think that says a lot for somebody. So how do you look at that? Because, you know, there are many footballers who people think, oh, well, you weren't quite good enough when you played for us, etc., etc. But there's never been that with you.
No, because, again, I think the reason for that is because I gave everything every single time I walked on a football pitch, regardless of who I was playing for, because that was just my mindset. So my mindset from 14 at being released was I was never going to be a footballer. And then at 16, I had this opportunity to maybe realise that dream. And I made a promise that I was going to do more than everybody else to be the best that I could be. So if you and I were in a room and we were going after one shirt, well, I'm going to get that shirt off you. That was my mindset. And it had to be my mindset because I was acutely aware that I was never the best player, right? But I had strengths that I think added value to teams, right? And without going into too much detail, look, I could guarantee you, I would say between 4 and 6 goals from set plays. I'd guarantee you 13 to 14 kilometres every week, and I'd guarantee you that I'd put set plays and crosses in the box, and we'd score goals from them, right? And that was what I could guarantee. And I think that when I look back on it now, that's probably why managers signed me, because they knew what they were going to get. They knew that they weren't going to get sort of all skills, flair play, but what they were going to get was somebody that was going to give them everything every single time they walked onto the pitch. And probably that's the reason that no one has a bad word to say about me, because they know that I gave everything. And then they forgive the mistakes that you make.
Yeah, well, it's a lovely thing to hear. When you went to Portsmouth, of course, you were playing alongside players like Paul Merson, who, you know, you'd suddenly, you'd watched on TV and you're suddenly in the same dressing room.
Yeah.
How difficult was that? Because, you know, some of us get starstruck and all that kind of thing. But did you benefit from that? Did you get from their experience? How did it work for you?
I think it was surreal because Paul was a star. I was, you know, a 20-year-old kid that had just come from League Two. We were at different ends of our careers. But what Paul was fantastic at, and this is what gospel truth he used to tell me, he'd sit in the changing room and say, Tails, okay, yeah, yes, Mercy, he'd say, run and I will find you. And that was it. That was how simple it was for me. So, you know, I played as a wing back in that team and just had to run. And when, obviously, you know, you receive the ball from him, and there are times when I scored some good goals and got some good assists. But for me to be, and to spend that season in the Championship playing alongside Paul, and I wouldn't say that, and Merce will tell you this, I wouldn't say he was the most professional player we had. But what he was probably the most consistent performer because he knew his body. He knew what he could do, and he was excellent. And, you know, the signature Paul Merson outside of the foot, right pass, he was just exceptional. So for me, you know, he was our captain, our leader that season, and it was good to see him get back to the Premier League of Portsmouth.
You did a lot of moving up and down, didn't you, the country? And I saw one interview we do this afternoon whereby, you know, family is very important to you. And so you kind of have to make a decision at some point, don't you, where, you know, you've got to put your family first and not move around the country so much. I mean, the life of a footballer is a transitory one, let's be honest. We spoke to Owen Doyle about this very subject a couple of weeks back, where, you know, 1 minute you could be playing at Portsmouth, the next minute the manager doesn't fancy you, you could be shipped off to somewhere else. How difficult is that?
Tough. I mean, you know, my wife and I, we met at 17, and I think we were both quite naive because I lived where I live now, in the house I live now, when I was playing for Portsmouth, and I used to travel, and we both thought, that's it, we're going to stay here forever. And I remember getting the phone call saying that there was 3 or 4 clubs who had had bids accepted for me, and they wanted to talk to me. Now, the closest one was Bolton to where I live, and that was a bit of a surreal experience. My wife was pregnant with our second child, so uprooting, moving is easy for me because you can take a pair of boots and some pants and socks and you're away, right? But it was a lot more difficult for the family, and, you know, 2 of my kids were born in Manchester, so it is difficult. But I think that where I'm fortunate is that she's been very supportive of me and has sacrificed, if you like, her career for me. And you know, these are things that I think the normal fan doesn't see. And what I mean by that is it's probably a topic that's not talked about very much, the upheaval. And you need a strong person, and you need a strong family unit behind you. And I left Burnley, and my focus had changed. You know, to get to where I got to, I had to be extremely selfish. You ask my wife, she'll tell you that she's the most selfish person I know. Right? So for me, everybody else had to make sacrifices for me to be successful, right? And I think that my focus changed when I left Burnley, and my wife was living back down here, and I was travelling, and I'd had enough. I wanted achieved. I felt everything I ever could have dreamt of in football. So I made the decision to turn down a move, which would have been very lucrative to me, but it would have been in the north of England, to go and sign for Northampton. I signed for Northampton because I could live at home. Right? That's the brutal truth of the matter. And sometimes it happens sort of younger in people's careers, but for me, it was about the age of 34, 35. I thought maybe it's time for me to put them first a little bit more. But it is a difficult thing. It's really tough at times. You're on your own a lot of the time when you first move to a football club, because you're expected, like you say, to be there the next day. The transfer has been agreed. You've got to go up there, but then you've left everything behind, and you're leaving your family, and invariably for players of my age at that time, you have children, right? You're married or you have a partner, so there's more to it than just the football part. But as I say, I've been very fortunate that I've got a very good lady behind me, so that helps.
That's lovely to know. There's I don't know whether you want to say this is true or not, but there's a story that Roy Keane tells about you, how you were thinking of going to Sunderland. You went up to see him in Sunderland, and do you remember that story that he told?
I do, yeah. It's partly true. Not all of it's true, as with a lot of these shows. There's some truth in it. I did go to meet them, yeah. How it, I won't go into details, but it just wasn't right for me. I didn't get that feeling. So, yeah, there's some truth in it, but I would, if what I don't want to do is go into any real details about it, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. We'll leave it there. You had a magnificent career, and I don't want to skip over it, but you'll be aware this is a Swindon thing. So most people want to know about your time at Swindon, and some of the questions coming in. This is from George, and he says, I wonder if you could ask Sir Matthew if, when he stepped up to take the free kick at Wickham, it was his intention to take the net off its hooks. One of my top 3 Swindon Town goals, the other 2 being Colin Coldwood from inside his own half and Lord Kenneth Stroud. Now, I was at Wickham that night, right? And that goal will live with me forever. It was an incredible goal. And sadly, somebody called Adebayo Akinfenwa came on and kind of turned the game a little bit. But when you're over a free kick like that, and as you said before, you'll get so many set-piece goals from you in a season. What are your thoughts? Is it just purely to put it in the top corner? What are your thoughts?
I think a lot of the time. So if I said to you when I was stood over that specific free kick that I wanted to put it in that exact place, I'd be lying. I think with modern day balls now, they move so much. So that ball actually started in the middle of the goal, and I hit it with the right technique. It ended up. And the other thing is, I scored one like that for West Ham, because for Bolton against West Ham, because the goalkeeper doesn't expect you to shoot. It's quite simple. He doesn't expect you to shoot. You're 35 yards out. He thinks you're going to cross the ball. You're slightly off centre. But no, I remember that feeling was brilliant, because Wickham's relatively close to us. A lot of my friends were there, so a lot of my mates were there, and so it was great for them. But as you say, it was disappointing that we didn't get anything from the game. But it comes down to, I think, also you have to have confidence in your own ability, so confidence in the way you strike the ball. But how do you get that confidence? That only comes through practice. So you perfect the technique. So if you can perfect the technique of liken it to a golf swing, why are the best golfers or why are the professional golfers so good? Because they're so consistent with the way they hit the ball. And that's because they've created a muscle memory throughout years and years of practice that their body now does it naturally. And it's the same from my experience, especially for me, standing over a free kick. If I stood over it now, I wouldn't do anything different to then. I'd probably just have to move it 10 or 15 yards closer.
It is extraordinary. I mean, the point is, you don't just ship up on a Tuesday night at Adams Park and hit it, do you? There is the hard work that goes into it. That's another thing that football fans don't see, the amount of hard work that goes on behind the scenes. And I guess when you're coaching young people, that's something you have to tell them about, the hard work that they have to go through.
Well, the best thing I can tell you, so if I look at it from my own personal experience, I was never the best player in the room, right? But if you look at academies, you look at Swindon's academy, you look at academies up and down the country, none of those players would be there if we didn't have talent. But talent gets you a chair, but talent isn't what keeps you there. And that's a big thing for me now. So when you speak to younger players, it's the stuff that you're willing to do that others aren't that will get you a career. Because especially when I was working at Tottenham in the academy, you have some absolutely phenomenal talents. But it's the ones with the elite mindset that make it. And that's make it to be a professional footballer. That's not make it to be a Premier League footballer. That's making it to maybe play in League One or League Two. Because you have to have a mindset that puts you apart from others. And what I mean by that is that there are things that as young men you are going to get as temptations. There are certain ways you have to live your life as a footballer to be successful. Because the body that you have is the vessel that earns you your money, which gets you the success that you want. And if you don't look after that, then you have an issue. So many players that I played with, and you turn around and you go, wow, he's had a fantastic career. But why has he had a fantastic career? Not because he was the best player, but because he had an elite mindset. But he was willing to do what somebody else wasn't. And that's why I'm sure that we all know so many talented footballers that didn't go on to have the careers that we expected them to. But then if you look underneath what underpins everything, if you like the foundations, maybe those foundations weren't laid correctly.
But was that all something you always was diet and things and the way you looked after yourself? Was that something you had from a young age?
It was something that I learnt, and it was something that I understood that if I was going to give myself the best opportunity to be the fittest player that I could be, then I had to be the leanest. Right, which if you speak to any of my family, when I was playing at the height of my career, we'd go to my mum's for a roast dinner, and I wouldn't have the roast dinner. Right? On Christmas Day, I wouldn't have a roast dinner. I wouldn't eat. And I've relaxed a little bit now, or quite a lot now, because obviously I'm not playing anymore. But at the time, I felt it gave me an edge, because I'm not sure how many people were doing that. And the other thing for footballers is that you're in direct competition with your teammate. And a lot of people don't see that. So yes, you think you're only in competition with the team that you play. You're not, because there'll be another guy or another two guys who want that shirt, who want that contract that you've got, and you've got to be able to do something that they're not going to do, which allows you to get that shirt for the Saturday. And as I say, it was just something I think that was probably instilled in me, that mindset from an early age. Why? Because I saw my mum and dad work their socks off to give my sister and I as much as they possibly could. It wasn't a huge amount, but my mum would have 3 jobs. My dad would be working 12 hours a day. And I think when you see that, and when that's subconsciously, because you don't understand that as a kid, do you? But then subconsciously that forms your values and what you're willing to do, and whatever career that is you go into. So subconsciously, I think it was just seeing my parents work hard that made me probably almost definitely the person I am today.
Well, they've done a very good job on you. It's as simple as that. Right, let's have a look. Mike Weston says, I think the most memorable thing about Matt is not specifically the goals, but his totally joyous, unrestrained celebrations of those goals. For us and others, we were right behind the goal at Wickham. He ran so fast to the away end, I was convinced he was coming over the barrier into the crowd. Such utter joy on his face every time he scored. Can't help but love that. Dave the Chair, Wickham, Port Vale, free kick away for us. Wow. One Matty Taylor. Thanks for the memories, Matt. Did Richie Wellens offer you a coaching role? You're welcome back any time. I think, well, you are. Simple as that. But we'll get on to Swindon in a minute and how it all changed. But you loved celebrating goals, didn't you? There was one memorable one, I think, for Pompey in the FA Cup at Anfield. Did you not run the whole length of the pitch after that?
Yeah, I was on the bench for that game. I was really annoyed I didn't start. And I came on, we were 1-0 down. And to score in front of the Kop, I mean, I've been really lucky. Like, I've scored at all of the big grounds in the country. Been really, really fortunate. So back in the day, the top 4 were slightly different, not massively different from now, but I've been fortunate enough. I've scored at Anfield, I've scored at Old Trafford, Stamford Bridge, the Emirates. So, I've been really lucky. And I think when you work so hard, that release of endorphins and chemicals, it literally consumes my body. At the time when I scored, there is no better feeling in football than scoring a goal, because it's the hardest thing to do. It really is. which is why every team up and down the country wants the best goal scorers at their level, because it's the hardest thing to do. So no, I thoroughly enjoy scoring goals, regardless of whether it was in front of 2,000 people or 60,000 people. It gives you a hell of a buzz.
Yeah. I mean, Erling Haaland makes it look easy, but hey, it isn't, is it?
Yeah.
It's simple. He has to work hard at making it look easy, doesn't he?
Well, it helps that he's, he plays in a team with absolutely unfathomable world-class talent by his side, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess it does. Yeah.
Not suggesting that he isn't extremely talented.
No, right. Sean says, "Hi Matt, we'll always remember that goal at Wickham. Wow, I mean, it's just an extraordinary goal, and I think anybody who was there that night will always remember it." Let's have a look. The one at Forest Green was good, says Mark. Now, if I remember rightly, Chris Hussey got injured in that game, didn't he? And was that the reason you moved to left back, because he was out for an extended spell?
I don't know. All I know was Flickers said to me, "Tails, get ready, going on." So I'm like, okay. One of the first acts was to put a corner in. And I think Ollie Lancashire scored from that. And then I had a shot, and how on earth it went in, I don't know. The goalkeeper should have saved it, but it went in. It was nice because it was along the side where the Swindon Town fans were as well. So it was a live game on Sky, and it was nice to be able to share that moment with them.
Yeah, Friday evening, if I remember right. It was live on Sky, but a nice evening to be at Forest Green. Let's have a look. I always think of Matt at Crawley away, 2-1 up in the 100th minute. Free kick from 20 yards. Matt hits the bar. They go at the other end, get a pen. We only had 9. Disappointing memories.
It went over the line, okay? It went over the line.
It went over the line. Marvellous. Thank you. There's only one Matty Taylor. We'll get onto that in a minute. Remember seeing that in the stands. Plus, love the goal versus West Ham while you were playing for Bolton. What superstitions did you have when playing? Did you have any superstitions?
I did, yes. Yeah. Yep. So why they came about, I don't know, but I always had to put my right sock on first. I had to put my right pad on, my right boot on first before my left. I had to put my right foot in my pants. I had to put my right leg in my shorts. Yeah, I have no idea why. I went through, I had a period in my career where I was struggling, and I think I was struggling because I was blaming other people. And I was young at the time, but I was blaming other people for me not playing. And one of the best things I did in my career for 15 years was I employed a sports psychologist. And it was, it gave me another edge. And, Michael and I would talk a lot about how could I give myself a marginal gain over others. So we used to, there were certain things that I'd do before a game to visualize how that game was going to go. All personal things for me, not team, that worked for me. But superstition, without a shadow of a doubt, and I still do it now when I put on a pair of shoes or I put on a pair of trainers or whatever it is, I put my right foot in first, and I do not know why. So, yes, a bit odd and bizarre.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, did you ever do it the wrong way and then have to take them off and then start again?
No.
Clearly not.
Never.
Derek says, totally get what Matt is saying, but how do you get this across to today's players? That's going back to what you were saying about working hard, diet, etc. When you sit down with a young player, how difficult is it to get that across? Because there are so many temptations these days, aren't they? Let's be honest. So it's very difficult for a young person to realise that they have to do that.
I think the proof is seeing the players that are successful and have longevity. Now, we're talking yesterday. You see the game yesterday. Ronaldo gets his 700th goal. Well, he's the perfect example, right? He epitomizes the way that you should live your life. So I think it's quite easy, but to help younger people, but at the same time, it has to come from within. So there's what's the saying? You can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Like, there comes a point where you can help people and you want to help young players, and it's not necessarily just football, is it? It's in life in general for younger people. I look at, and I can only talk about my children, but I think it's imperative for me that my children are brought up understanding what hard work looks like, right? Because there'll be a point when they realise that actually not everything's given to you now on a plate. You've actually got to go out there and compete against somebody else for what you want. and you've got to be different. So I think it's a learned behaviour. You know, there'll be something inside of you that will give you that. But I also think that you'll learn it as from a football perspective. I learnt it because of the rejection I'd had, and then being around senior players and seeing what they did. Right, so you do a lot of learning from, or I did a lot of learning from your coach or your manager. But actually, I did my best learning from watching the senior players.
Yeah,
and how did they go about their day?
You had some managers, didn't you? You had sort of the likes of Harry Redknapp and Sam Allardyce, people like that. And I guess there's a sort of changing of the guard, isn't there? I mean, Steve Bruce has gone today. You know, so there is a changing of the guard from the older generation to the younger generation, but they still have a lot of wisdom to pass on to people, don't they?
Of course, yeah. And look, I can only talk from my experience. And you know, when I was doing it, there's certain people in the game that you'd lean on. And why would you lean on them? Because they've been through the experiences that you haven't, or maybe that you'll face at a specific time. So yeah, you know, football's a strange game, right? Because whatever way you look at it, the aim of the game has not changed since its inception, right? So it's an invasion game. I've got to put the ball in your net, and you've got to put it in mine. And sometimes when you may be listening or you're watching somebody talk about the game, the wheel doesn't need to be invented. It's still, the game is in essence what it was 100 years ago. Okay, some of the rules have changed, but I've still got to keep out of my net, and you've still got to keep out of yours. And of course, there's going to be trends within football, 100%. We're seeing one now with change of formations, and we talk about a counter press. Well, a counter press is you run after the ball when you give it away, right? I was taught that sort of 12 or 13. So yeah, it's most definitely changing. I hope to see more young British coaches getting an opportunity in the professional game. I think it's fantastic that Graham Potter has been given an opportunity at Chelsea. You know, I wouldn't know when the last English manager, or who the last English manager was at Chelsea, other than Lampard. But I look at it and I just think the young English coaches now are being given opportunities that maybe they weren't before, and I hope that continues.
Well, let's talk about your time at Swindon then. David Flitcroft signed you, and it's not far from where you lived. I guess that was your primary decision for coming to the town. What were your first impressions of the club when you got there?
Well, one, I would say that the fans are passionate. And what I learned very early on in my career is that fans at smaller so-called football clubs, i.e. League One and League Two, the fan base, the hardcore fan base, are far more knowledgeable. And what I mean by that is that because actually, so Swindon Town fans, the majority of Swindon fans are from Swindon, or they have a family allegiance in Swindon, they have a tie to Swindon. So therefore they have an affinity with the town. So it's their club, right? It's not a Manchester United where fans are all the way around the world and they go and watch the games on TV, right? Swindon Town fans go and watch the game week in, week out. For away support, fantastic, really vocal. If I was being brutally honest, I think that the home fans at times could be louder, right? When I'm playing there, I'm just talking from a personal point of view. And the only reason I say that is because the fans away from home were unbelievable. You know, not only were they loud, but I remember many occasions, 1,500 to 2,000 fans going away. I mean, that's pretty much unheard of in League Two. So at home, I think that, let's be honest, the ground is really nice for the level. The pitches, Marcus has always got the pitch in perfect condition. Other teams wanted to come and play there, and they enjoyed playing on the pitch, right? They enjoy playing at Swindon because they know it's a good ground. I loved every minute of it. I think to finish my career there was right for me, right? And it was never, in football, it's really difficult to plan. And I'm really pleased that I phoned David after speaking to the manager at Northampton and asking him was I going to play next season, that season? And he said to me, well, Matt, I'm not sure you'll be in and out. So I had met David 3 or 4 years previously on holiday with the families. So I had David's number and I phoned him up, and my exact words were to him, are you interested in taking me? Because I'd like to come. That was my exact words to him. They've told me I can have a free transfer. Are you interested? His response was, let me speak to the chairman, Tails, and I'll get back to you. And within 2 or 3 days, it was done. So I was really pleased. It was a new challenge for me, right? It was a new challenge. I knew and know quite a lot of Swindon Town fans. So it was something that I felt was close enough to me in terms of first location, but also what it meant to those that I know. You know, you guys will all know Mavis and Pete that live in the same village as me, right? And all of the villagers in the pub support Swindon Town. So I daren't go in there if I didn't do well on a Saturday for a pint afterwards. But no, so, you know, where I live is very much, you know, you've got Swindon Town supporters here. So I understood how passionate the fans were. And I loved my 2 years there. I think if I'm being honest, I probably could have played another year. But at that point, I just had enough physically and mentally. And that was a tough decision for me to make. But I'm very, very pleased that I managed to finish my career playing for Swindon.
And how is it when you get that relationship with the fans? Because, as I said to you, I don't think any club that you played for speaks ill of you. And certainly every Swindon fan appreciates that too. You were there. And I describe you as one of the classiest players we've had playing red and white. And how does it make you feel when you get that connection with the supporters?
I suppose it gives you a nice warm feeling inside. I don't know any other way you can describe it. But I'll go back to what I said. I think that one of the main reasons for that is so your time costs nothing, right? And to engage with people on a match day doesn't really take any time. And I think that probably that's one of the things that the fans would have liked. And I think the other thing is that, go back to it, every time I put a football shirt on, there's not one person that could ever say to me, Matt, you didn't give everything. That for me is just epitomises what I was as a footballer, really. I'd make mistakes, you know, but if I gave the ball away, I'd do my damnedest to get it back. And I would give everything that I possibly had for the football club that I was representing. And I felt I did that for 2 years at Swindon. Look, it would have been nicer, of course it would have, if it was young. It was, you know, earlier in my career, and Swindon Town were in a higher division. I mean, the first ever Premier League game I went to watch was Swindon versus Liverpool. And I stood behind the goal. And I think it was 4-0 to Liverpool, I want to say. I think Glenn Hoddle played and was manager and was probably still the best player on the pitch. But that was the first Premier League game my dad took me to. So, you know, Swindon, I've always understood and known about, you know, its heritage. And as I say, I go back on it and say I was really, really fortunate that I managed to play for 2 years.
When was the moment you thought, do you know what, that's enough? I mean, you said that your body probably tells you. Is that when a footballer knows that, you know, maybe now is the time to stop?
For me, it was more mental than physical. So what else was I striving to achieve from a personal point of view? And I felt that a little bit, if I took a contract, was I taking a young player's opportunity away? Right? And would that be fair? And what's the reason I'm doing it for? But also, it was really important to me to finish my career on my terms. That was one of the biggest things that I had to do, because mentally then I was prepared. And if, like so many of my ex-teammates, friends and colleagues have had their career ripped away from them through injury, I was really lucky. Yes, I had some bad injuries, but I was really lucky that I was in a position at 37 where I could still play football. And I wanted to be able to enjoy my life afterwards. And what I mean by that is I wanted to continue to be physical. Right? So I wanted to continue to be able to run. And I felt that if I'd have carried it on, I maybe ran the risk of not being able to finish my career the way I wanted. Speak to any ex-footballer. I think that it's much easier to deal with. It's never easy to deal with when you finish playing, but I think you can come to terms with it better if you've made the decision and it's not been made for you. And that was a big thing for me. I had to be able to make that decision.
Yeah, fair enough. Sorry about the interruption of the noise there. I was just plugging my laptop in. I was getting a bit of a battery. Now, I've got to ask you about one particular game. We've had lots of questions about this. How did you feel managing your first game for Swindon? Now, the whole crowd was with you. Now, I read an article that you were involved in recently with the Coach's Voice, which is a fascinating article. Many of us remember that game, and many of us were 110%. You can't have 110%, I know that, but behind you. We wanted you to do well in that game. And I remember speaking to somebody at the club and said that you worked your socks off that week, getting things ready. This is after David Flickroth had gone to Mansfield. You didn't want to do it, did you?
No.
I think the chairman sort of persuaded you to do it or asked you to do it. And how was that week? Because suddenly you're a player, all right, you've been a coach, but suddenly that team is yours for that game. How was that week?
Well, it was disrupted because of the weather. We had a game called off, I think, and Lee phoned me. I want to say it was on a Sunday night. He phoned me and he said that David is left. Would you take the team? And I said no. And he just asked me, please, would you take the team? I said, I'll take the team on one condition: I'm not playing. No, you've got to play. So I'm not taking the team then. And we met up the following evening. And he just, he said, I need you to do it for me. I said, fine. I said, I haven't changed my stance on it now. I'll do it for you until you find somebody else, but I'm not playing. So we eventually agreed on that. And, we'd had, I think, 10 days training because we'd had games called off leading up to it. And all through those days, I hadn't trained. I went to watch Cheltenham on a Tuesday night. It was just Dean. So Dean Thornton and I, it was just the two of us left, so the goalkeeping coach and myself. And it was tough, it was difficult, but what made it even more difficult was on the Friday, I think it was Ellis who got injured. Ellis was meant to be playing left back or left wing back and got injured. Now, bear in mind, I haven't trained for 10 days. I haven't really slept. My mind's been firmly stuck in the wrong direction. And I had to play. Right, and it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. So you've got to, at that time, I think I was captain for the game as well. So you've got to name somebody else for captain. You have to go in and do the team sheet. So bear in mind, I've got to prepare for a game. We need to work out who's playing, what formation they're playing, strengths and weaknesses we've obviously already gone through with the players. So then I'm stood there in my kit. It's bizarre. Delivering a message, a pre-game message to the players. We go and warm up. Well, my head's not on the game. I don't want to play football. I've got far with bigger things going on. And it was just surreal experience. And I remember probably about the first 40 minutes we did okay, and then we gave a foul away and he scored an absolute worldie with a free kick. But the second half was just a blur because not only was I playing, I was over the far side from where the bench was. That's quite a long run, and we'd come up with plans of subs that we'd make at certain times if things were going well, if they weren't going well. But as the game progresses, I just remember having to tell a couple of the players that you're going to have to go down and just get some treatment because I need to go over there for 2 minutes and find out what we're doing. There was so many things going around in my head at the time. One, I couldn't focus on my own performance. And in hindsight, I should have stuck by my guns and not played at all and maybe put somebody else there. But that probably goes against my personality because my personality is I do whatever I can to help somebody out and to help the team out. So, it was an interesting experience. To say it didn't inspire me to want to be a manager would be an understatement because that 10 days was probably the most stressful that I'd been through to that point in my life.
So, okay, then, I have to ask you the question. You did become a manager after that. So what did you take from that experience? Because all of us who were there that day desperately wanted to get something out of that game for you. We really want you to win that game. And it was a huge disappointment that you didn't get that win. But what did you personally take out of that you took onto your coaching stroke management?
The first thing I took out of it, that was nowhere near ready. So it would have been, 18 months later that I left. So those 18 months I was player coach. So for those 18 months I was observing Phil, Richie, Neil, and seeing what they did. Right. So that was the first thing. And then I had another 2 years of learning, making a load of mistakes. What did I learn? What did I learn from those 3.5 years? That you have very little control as a manager or as a head coach. And when I say control, I mean on the outcome of the result, because there are so many variables in the game of football that a lot of it's out of your control. And look, any head coach, any manager understands that when they go into their new role, the buck stops for them, right? Anyone understands that. There's only 2 ways in which you leave a job. One is you get sacked, or 2, you're successful and somebody else comes and acquires your services. They're the only 2 ways you leave, right? So I was acutely aware of that. But the difficulty is that when you're a player, you can have a real effect on the outcome of a result, because you're out there and you're in it, if you like. You're in the ring, if you like. When you're on the side, you have to relinquish some power. And what I mean by that is that's just internally, because as much as you want to help, you have to trust in the belief that you have put in the players, that they're going to go out and implement the game plan. But the human reality of it is that players will make mistakes, players will make bad decisions, players will make good decisions, right? And it's just trying to be as consistent as you can and get a group of players that are as consistent as they can be at any level of football that you're at. Right? And so if I go back to when you guys got promoted and won the league, albeit it was through COVID, well, why did you win it? Because you scored more goals, because you had more than one goal scorer on the pitch. There's obviously far more in terms of detail to it than that, but you had Yates and Doyle, right, who scored, I don't know how many goals they scored throughout that season, but they were a huge part of why you got promoted. And I think that the learning I've made and had, in the last 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, is that it has to all be about the players. It can't be about the manager, it can't be about the coach, it has to be about the players. But then for it to be about the players, you have to have the right players in the building. And look, it's a difficult one. At times I enjoyed my time at Walsall, at times I hated it, right? I absolutely despised it and hated it because there was so much that was out of my control. So we had probably a period where we were exceptional. I think we didn't lose. I think we lost 2 games out of 13 and won probably 5 or 6 of those. Right, so we were doing well, but players go off form. And those are things that you can't legislate for as a manager, but you have to have, if you like, used to talk about it a lot, that at any level, whether you're managing the Premier League or you're managing League 2, the problems that you'll face will be similar, except the outcomes that you'll be able to have at a higher level will be easier to achieve. So in essence, what you need every single day is a fire extinguisher in your office, because there's problems that come through the door that you've not foreseen. Now, it's imperative that those problems don't affect what you're trying to do at the weekend or in your next game, which is win. Because that's all everyone wants to see. Right? They want to see you win. And a hell of a lot of learning. As I say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Gutted that we got beaten in the FA Cup by Swindon.
Yes.
What I will say is that the Swindon Town fans were brilliant with me that day. I will say that. It meant a lot.
Yeah, the one thing I think we're also disappointed was, of course, the game you were supposed to play at Swindon at Christmas was off because of COVID, if I remember rightly, and so therefore you didn't have a chance to come back to the county ground with your team, did you? And people would have given you a great reception. And sadly, by the time it was rearranged, I think you'd gone by then. So that moment when you're told that you're no longer required by a football club, you know, that's another tough decision to have to take, isn't it? And we've seen 20 go so far this season. 2 have gone today, for goodness sake. How tough is that to take?
It's a different look. If you go into the job understanding what the remit is, so regardless of any conversations that you have prior to you taking the job, right, and whether or not you achieve that, it's all about winning, right? Do I think that if I'd have stayed there, we would have been fine and won? Yes, I do, because the players were coming back that we had missed. So do I? Yeah, but when you're a football coach, you live and you die by the results that you achieve. And we didn't get enough. We had a period of 7 games, and during those 7 games, we lost, I think, 5 of them by 1 goal, and 4 of them, if not 5 of them, we gave away goals after 90 minutes. And sometimes this is where reflection and time is really good, because sometimes you have to actually sit back and go, could I have affected that player's decision making within that period of time where the pressure is mounting? I think you can, but you need time to do it. And, you know, it's very difficult now because, as you say, 2 managers have been sacked today. Time is something that you're not going to get, I think, as a first team manager now, unless you're successful straight off. And you know, lots of my colleagues are coaches, lots of my colleagues are managers, and you know, they do their best, right? And they work extremely hard, and they work 14, 15-hour days, 6 days a week. But quite often they're not in control of the result because you're putting your faith and trust in others. Now, that is the role, that's the job. You've got to coach the players and manage the players to go out and perform at the weekend. 100% you do. But in terms of the feeling, I'm a realist. I understood. I think that if I sat here now and said to you, I don't accept full responsibility for what happened at Walsall, I'd be a liar, because I do. But why do I accept full responsibility? Because I'm a man. And I knew that when I took the job, if we didn't win enough games, I wouldn't keep my job. So for me, it's pretty clear and pretty straight. But, you know, I hope that managers that have lost their jobs, you know, they get the opportunity to get back into the game in some capacity, whether that's the first team manager or as an assistant, or whether it's something else in the game.
Well, Derek says, interesting to hear Matt's comments regarding management. Perhaps some of our supporters will now cut Scott Lindsay some slack. This has been one of the best on the sofas there have been. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much, Matt, for that. You were the first opposition manager at Walsall who the town fans applauded. That says a lot about a person. Now, let me do something on the lighter side of life, because you did take a part in the Matt Taylor derby, of course, when he was at Exeter and you were, yes. And what was funny, even funnier, was BBC Radio Devon, I used to work for, got the Met man, Matt Taylor, to do the weather forecast. Yep. Who is a Blackburn fan. So you didn't play for either. For that club, you played for Bolton and for Burnley, but not Blackburn. I mean, it was one of the great sort of, I don't know, quirky moments in football, really, wasn't it?
It was a good game of football. I know that much. It was a really good game of football. There, you know, Matt, he's one of the good guys, and it's fantastic to see him now getting an opportunity after he's done so well at Exeter. He got time to build there, and you know, he's a good guy, and I wish him the best of luck. That day was a really good game. I mean, my team at the time showed huge character to come back. I think it's a really difficult place to go, especially in League Two. You look at the results they've got in League One this year. It's great cohesion. You know, he's been able to sign the players that he wanted and really build a squad there. He's got some exceptional footballers. But yeah, we did have a beer after the game. It was a 2-2 draw, and have a little bit of a laugh about it.
Yeah, great thing. Right, Gerald says, where are you coaching now? What are you doing now?
I am, at this precise moment in time, I am taking time out to be dad, right? Something that I haven't done properly for a long time. This is the first time I've had a break from football since the age of 16. I'm 41 next month, right? And I've been But the reason I was on late tonight is because my daughter was playing football. And she had a school game tonight, and I then had to go and pick up the other 2 kids from a fair at 6:45 and come home. I think getting a bit of a taste for what my wife did for 17 years. Like, am I enjoying it? Yeah, there's certain aspects of it that I enjoy, because I think what I'm able to do now is give the children my time, so I can go and watch all of their sport. I can go and watch all of their school productions, and that is something I haven't been able to do. 100%, I will go back to work, but whatever that looks like, it has to be right for me. You know, the football club, whatever that role is within a football club, I think is irrelevant, whether it's a head coach, whether it's assistant, whether it's something else, right? What's imperative is the people at the football club and the people that you work with on a daily basis. So, you know, have I had conversations about jobs? Yeah, I have, yeah. But at the moment, there's not something that's come across my table that I felt fit perfectly, because, you know, I'm acutely aware that I'm probably going to get one more opportunity if I want to go back and be a first team manager. So that's got to be the right fit and the right football club. So I'm really enjoying my time at home. We've been on holiday. We've spent time together as a family, which we haven't done. I can go, as I say, the big thing for me is I can go and watch my children play sport. My daughter is in the academy at Swindon, so I'm up there all the time watching her. I think that I'm up at one of the games in the next week or two, because the next couple of weeks, because she's on the pitch at half time. So, yeah, you know, I just get to do the normal things that I didn't get to do for so long in my life.
You'll be aware today's Mental Health Awareness Day, and football, I don't know, has it hidden mental health in recent times? How is it, would you say, that football is looking after that now?
I don't think it's hidden it. I think it's far more spoken about now. And I think the reason for that is because as a society, the world is moving on. Men historically, I've been guilty of it, and not very good at talking about the problems and talking about their issues. Right? We see it as a weakness. And when you work in a male-dominated environment like I did since leaving school, the last thing you want to do is show any weakness. But I think what we're doing now is we're educating younger people that actually it's okay to not be okay. Right? And the best thing you can do is talk about it to somebody. And it's not necessarily who you talk to. Right? It might be a school teacher, it might be a coach, it might be one of your oldest friends that you haven't spoken to for years. I know us as men, we do that, right? I've got my best mate, I haven't spoken to him for a year, but I know that if I needed him and there was an issue, that I could call him. I just think it's important for us all to talk, because regardless of what everything looks like on the outside, we're all going through issues, right? Every single person has something that they're not happy about, and to be able to talk to people about it and to be able to open up, I think is a really good thing. You know, I would like to think that if any had issues or was going through things, that, you know, you'd reach out to them. I know that, you know, I've reached out to some guys that have recently been in the same position as me. And why have I done that? Because I know how they feel. And, you know, from a coach's perspective, a football coach's perspective, your phone never stops ringing when you've got a job. When you haven't got a job, you know, it's very easy to become quite insular and not talk to people. And regardless of what you look at it, what way you look at it, you're in the dugout against each other, but actually you're just trying to do the same thing. You're trying to win a game of football. So I think men and women, if we can talk more, be open, far more open in society, I think it's a fantastic thing. So, you know, it's good to talk, they say, don't they? But it's breaking that barrier first and foremost of actually realizing that, okay, everything's not all right, but I'm going to go and make a phone call to somebody and have a chat. Because I know when I talk to people, it makes me feel better. I know that. And if I know that, then, you know, 9 times out of 10, if I'm having a bad day, I give my dad a call. I'll have a chat with my dad. And he normally tells me I'm a bloody idiot and to get on with it. So quite happy with that.
Claire says, I get being a football manager, it's all results and points related. Nobody wants to lose, but surely expectations, especially at lower league level, are far too high. Are they far too high? Because everybody wants it, as you rightly said, all football fans want their football team to win. And if they don't win every week, then people start getting grumpy. You know what it's like. We're all the same, football fans. I'm the same as everybody else. But are our expectations too high with the resources that are available to managers at lower league level now?
I think it's independent of every football club. That would be my take on it. Are expectations too high? It depends, doesn't it? So, are you going into a football club to build something, i.e., change the identity, or are you going in there to win? Well, if you're going in there to win, my argument would be, well, that's going to be over. You're going to win over maybe the style of football, right? So I think it's a difficult one. Expectation is always going to be there. Like, you're not going to get away from it. You can't shy away from it. But there also has to be a dose of reality. Now, the dose of reality is that there are certain clubs within every league professionally in this country who are at the top of the league because they have more money, which means they have better players, right? It's just a fact. If you look at the Premier League, the best players play for the teams that pay them the most money. It's the same in every industry, right? There's nothing you can do about that. Is that the same in my experience in the lower leagues? I think so, yeah. And it's about being competitive. So what you want to do is you want to try and find, a USP that makes you different to other clubs. So maybe it allows you to attract a player who's being offered more money elsewhere, but you can offer them something they can't. Now that's going to be different for every football club as well. But expectations are always going to be there. Listen, you go in the pub anywhere on a Saturday afternoon, everybody you speak to is a Premier League manager. And you have to understand that. But you have to understand that because football is our national sport. Everybody loves football. It's a universal language. But in this country, we all think we're Premier League managers, don't we? Because we all play the fantasy football leagues. But once you accept that, as a football coach or a manager, the worst thing you can do is go on social media, because it will make you feel wonderful when you've won and it will make you feel terrible when you've lost. When actually trying to keep on an even keel was probably the most difficult thing as a coach or as a manager, because when you win, it's euphoric. And then when you lose, you think it's the end of the world. But actually, it's not. It's just a game of football. But it does mean so much to so many people. But expectations are always going to be there. There's nothing you can do about that. You've just got to try and contain that expectation while you're in the job.
You wouldn't want to go to Watford every 5 minutes, though, would you? Let's be honest. That's a different animal altogether, that, isn't it? That's a bonkers thing. Kevin says, what a great guy you are, Matt Taylor. And I think that echoes what many people are saying. Thank you so much for your time. And we've taken an hour of it. So I really appreciate it. And we've had some fascinating insights to the world of not only a top-class footballer, but coaching as well. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
No, well, Chris, you spoke to me, didn't you, at Supermarine? I apologise. I would have been on sooner, but no, it's been good fun. Thank you, and thank you for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And it's, as Vic said, it's been an insight, and I'm sat here nodding my head every 5 minutes with what you're saying, because you don't think of these things and some of these things you brought up until you actually sort of hear somebody else saying them, I think. So
yeah. I've tried to be as open, as honest as I possibly can be with with everything, because, like you say, sometimes maybe these types of issues aren't raised within football, and the reason for that, I think, is because football fans just see the footballers on a pitch, and they don't understand everything that surrounds that. I mean, I think I'm just a normal fella like you are, Vic, right? I'm just normal guys, but I happen to have a talent to be able to play football. That was what my talent was. But when you dress it down, I'm just a normal person, a husband and a dad, and that is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, Paul says, did you go to the Walsall Swindon game at the end of last season? And which side of the fence was he on? That was the 3-0 victory at Bescott, which puts.
No, I did not.
No,
I did not. I have been to one Swindon game this year because my daughter, the Rochdale game, because my daughter was on the pitch at half time. So I went to watch her. I've been to watch quite a few games, and I'll be at Swindon in a couple of weeks when she's on the pitch again. So she's very excited about that. So she proudly wears her Swindon Town kit every Monday night. So
fantastic.
And it's
That's what we
great
like
news
to
today
hear.
that the women's team will be playing after the men's team in a couple of weeks' time, which is fantastic.
Brilliant.
They're allowed, there'll be a full game straight after the first team, so that's a fabulous
Yeah,
development.
it'd be brilliant. Brilliant, and hopefully, as many of the fans will stay and watch it and support the team as possible,
Yeah.
because I think that the game is most definitely growing, and I can only talk from personal perspective. I have an 11-year-old daughter who's absolutely obsessed by football. It's fantastic for me because, we can go and watch, she'll go and watch any game with me anywhere. It's fantastic. So, hopefully it continues, and another great result for the England team against the USA the other evening. So hopefully onwards and upwards.
Lovely.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much,
Cheers,
Matt.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
we're going to just stay right there for a moment. We're going to finish this now, but
I will.
just stay there. We've got, lovely. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much for everybody for watching. As I said, we will be back next Monday with a Monday night panel reviewing the Colchester game. And then Tuesday, we've got Danny Willison, but that will be recorded because it is 11 o'clock in the morning. So some of you might not be able to do that one live. So thank you very much for everybody for joining us. Thank you for our panel. Thank you again, Matt. And we will see you all soon.